For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dan DeVries, career coach for young professionals. And this evening with us, we have Bec, and she is a certified advanced resume writer, and she's going to give us all of these amazing tips that are just going to make us have the best resumes in the world. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting and a slightly different topic to the kinds of things we usually cover on my live stream workshops. So what we're going to do tonight, first part, Bec is going to debunk some common myths and misconceptions about resumes. And then after that, she's going to talk about the resume presentation and structure versus the content as an idea. And then at the end, we're going to have a Q&A session, probably 10 minutes worth, depending on how many questions there are and how many people have some amazing questions to ask Bec. And I will chime in every now and then, hopefully with some zinger sort of questions that keep you on your seat. And then we'll go from there. So I will pass over to Bec just to quickly introduce yourself, Bec, to the audience, and then we'll get stuck into it.
Yeah, thank you for having me and for being so flexible over the past couple of weeks, firstly. So yeah, I think I'm pretty well equipped to speak on this topic by now. I have nearly 12 years experience in the careers industry. That's across employment services, recruitment, outplacement, and career transition programs. Like you mentioned, I think about one of 72 certified advanced resume writers with Career Directors International. That's globally. And yeah, I've had my fairly successful resume writing business established since 2014. Referred by many recruiters in the industry and maintain a lot of strong relationships with many of them as well, which I think says something. And yeah, I think by now it's close to the thousands of people that I've, graduates, professionals, managers, executives that I've worked with across a wide range of industries through job search coaching, resume writing, LinkedIn development, and all of those wonderful things. So yeah, really appreciate you having me on to share what I've learned over that time.
Awesome. Before we jump in, do you reckon you'd be able to estimate how many resumes you've seen or been a part of? Like how many thousand?
No, there's just no possible way. Like we're talking since 2010, and that was case managing 200 plus people who were long-term unemployed and needed things like resume assistance. So it's got to be the late, close to tens of thousands, I reckon. So
wow. Okay. So you've seen a fair few more resumes than me, even though I've hired several hundred people over the years. So I think your view of how, because my view of resumes will be much, much narrower. So I'm very interested to hear some of your views of the much more wider, broader experience that you have. So, all right. So thinking about our young professionals who are the audience here tonight, can you tell us some of the common misconceptions about and myths about resumes and in your experience, how people get tripped up by them?
Yeah, I think the biggest one that comes to mind that you'll see a lot of career coaches kind of peddling and misinformation and fear mongering is around the whole ATS. So that essentially that resume robots are binning your resume before it even makes it to human eyes, right? So there's a lot of that to try and, we'll teach you how to beat the ATS and all that sort of stuff.
I have seen that. Yes, I've seen that around.
Yeah, plenty of that. I would just say have an awareness about what it is. So it's an applicant tracking system. It's essentially a searchable digital filing cabinet that holds your information and is combed by humans for suitable candidates. It is not making any decisions about your resume when you send that through for a job application, and is not, sending it off into exile before anyone even gets to read it. That's just not how it works. So I think that's the first and foremost. People think that's what they're up against. And it can feel like that because I know a lot of people just within a couple of hours say, I got a rejection email. No one's even looked at it. It's not the case. It's still run by humans. It's just having an understanding of how you can work your resume so that it is optimized for those systems, basically. So, it converts your information and stores it into their database so they can search for people like you.
Yeah, okay. So on that front, would you say that the optimization part, what you're doing is knowing that this kind of system is going to be used and using tactics to try and be more visible or more prevalent compared to other applicants. Is that the goal there?
Yeah, exactly. And that comes down to whether it was an ATS in place or not. You want to be reading that job description, highlighting the skills and qualities, and reflecting those in your resume within the context of your experience. So it's like using the information that they give you so that you're perceived as a strong match. So yes, you would like optimize it through keywords is still important, but not overthinking it too much. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I've seen some of these before. There would be it would get a rating or like a percentage rating that would potentially make it first, or well, in the top area of the list that people review in order if they were using the ATS. And if you're down the bottom of the list, maybe they won't get to you, but potentially it's still always being reviewed by a human for applicability.
Yeah, if they're doing their job correctly, that's how it rolls. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. What any other really prevalent myths or misconceptions?
Yeah, I think there's, people just trying to, they think there's a magic silver bullet to resume writing. And a common one I hear is, what's the golden page number? There isn't one. It's just that relevance to the role determines the length of your resume. Does everything on it speak to their needs? Then it's as long as that needs to be. But, if you want a rule of thumb, 2 to 3 pages is very safe. You're not going to, put anyone off. I know you and I have had a conversation about preferences there. You're never going to please every single person in the whole wide world, but I think that 2 to 3 pages would be industry. Everyone would say that's fairly standard and reasonable.
Have you had any experience potentially asking the recruiter or the hiring manager what their preference is and then tailoring it to that if you have the opportunity to?
If you have the opportunity to, always. It should be a matter of if you can make contact, firstly, for who to personalize and address that to, but to say, do you have a page requirement and even a format, whether it's Word or PDF preference? If you can get to that person and ask that question, that definitely does not hurt at all. I just think, I know you yourself, when you've hired, you've put in the thing, a resume no more than 2 pages. If they're not following that instruction, that's probably telling you something about their effort and commitment to that. But yeah, if that is not stated, I think 2 to 3 is very, very reasonable.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, and I think
so. I was going to ask. I view personally, Dan's opinion, I view a resume as a sales document. It's about selling yourself. And as someone who works in sales and business development, it's always at the top of my mind about how selling yourself is about making sure that you're aligning the needs with what you have. So the need is what the employer has stated through their job ad. It may not be crystal clear, but you can interpret it to understand what their needs are. And then making sure that you're putting yourself forward in the best light to show that I'm the person that fills your need. And so, does that kind of align with your way of thinking?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's like, at the end of the day, if you've checked that box and you've put that effort in and you seem like a logical hire, you are not going to be thrown out of the pile because you didn't meet a page number or a page requirement. Oh, not a requirement, but because you didn't meet a preference of theirs. That would be,
and just before we move on to the next kind of topic, I do have to ask you if you've seen the meme where they grab half the resumes and throw it in the bin and say, we can't afford to work with unlucky people here. Have you seen that one?
No, I haven't seen that one.
I'll send it to you afterwards. But so there's a hiring manager talking to a colleague, and they take the whole pile of resumes and they pick up half of them and throw them in the bin and say, look, we just can't afford to work with unlucky people. And they ended up in the bin. Obviously it's a joke, but I think potentially it's not outside the realms of possibility in some circumstances. It would be highly unprofessional, but there's some crazy stuff that goes on in some hiring managers, in my experience. So, that one's good for a laugh, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, good couple of myths, especially about the ATS one. That one I think I hadn't thought about that for a long time. Mind you, I haven't applied for a job in quite a while. So it's not top of mind for me. So that's really good to know. And I think it's going to be really relevant to the people watching tonight.
Yeah.
So the next topic is around presentation and structure versus content. And I'm keen to understand what you want to talk about there, because I'm not quite sure how you're going to talk about them separately.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think the other thing that I come across a lot is that request to, the multi-column format for a resume, for example, that you see a lot in Canva and those sorts of things, being like, can you do my resume like this? When they're just focused on the pretty sort of distracting the pretty resumes, right? Like, I want my resume to look like this. Presentation and structure, to me, should support content. Like, content is number one. Content is king, but structure and presentation needs to support that content being read in the most easy to understand manner, if that makes sense. So presentation to me is about, do you have simple design elements that make it very simple for me to read and flow through your document and grab information that is important? So that could be shading, a little use of color, bold. It's not going crazy on those things. It's using them strategically to draw my eye to the right types of information, or the career highlights or achievements, right? And so using design in that, not as a distraction tool, because all the prettying up, the gimmicks, the graphics, they're not going to save you if your content is really poor. So I think that's the first thing I would say. They do go hand in hand, and one needs to support the other. So the biggest thing,
completely, as someone reviewing resumes, if you make it easy for me to understand your information, the relevant information, if you remove the friction for me to find you and find the information about you, that's what I want. People want things to be easier for them. And if you can make it easier for the person that you're presenting the information to, you're more likely to get seen and picked up, and I guess remembered as well, as the other key thing. Because if it's easy to spot and easy to find the information I'm looking for, I'm far more likely to remember it. And when it goes to shortlisting and then moving to interview, make it easy for me and I'll do it.
Yeah. So I think that's the key thing first. Let's start with that your format and presentation should be uncluttered, really simple, white space. So that's when I say uncluttered. We want some breathing space. And, when people try and, for instance, put or just present a one-page document, rarely is it the case that people can do that well, and you just get slammed with a wall of information, and we just don't take it in. So we need adequate margins, adequate spacing between sections, and breathability, readability. So I guess that the basics of structure I'll just touch on, if that's okay. Things that I know it sounds very simple, but I see it all the time. Your name and contact details at the top only need to take up a couple of lines. I've seen it take up quarter page, half a page. Get rid of that. Couple of lines, and not in the header, because that could be lost when it is going through that ATS system. So that's something that you optimize for and are aware of. Keep it in the body of the document, but right at the top. Under that, you would just simply start with the title of the role that you're targeting. So really quickly position yourself for the role you're going for. And then from there, a 2 to 3 line value proposition, professional skill set that speaks to the technical and hard skills needed in the particular role, and then qualifications and experience. So you stick to something like that in terms of the flow, you can't really go too wrong. On experience, we want reverse chronological. That is the most widely accepted format of a resume still. And that is as simple as, obviously the most recent and working backwards, but also how you present that information. I would say stick to very simple format of your company and job title on the left-hand side, your date on the right-hand side, and then sort of aligned down the left-hand side. That has been proven to be how us humans read down a page. So work with that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the reverse chronological just makes perfect sense, right? Because your latest experience is going to be the most relevant to whichever job that you're seeking to take. So that, and I've never actually thought of it that way, but yeah, I've always just somehow known that you just put the most recent work first. But I never, as when I've been applying for jobs in the past, never thought about it in such a structured and planned way. It's more about just put the stuff on the page and hope for the best. So if we have a system, or at least some basic design ideas and concepts to follow to increase our chances, I think that's a really solid kind of way forward.
Yeah, like it's super simple, but like I said, it just works in with the way that we read documents, and that's why I was sort of saying that multi-column format that you see. A lot of people, they seem to think it's more aesthetically pleasing. We just don't read like that. It's a lot of people find that layout of information confusing, and you don't get the space either when you're reducing your column width to share your experience. You just don't get the space to sort of elongate those achievement bullet points as well. You're pretty condensed on the page. So I would say stick with something like I've just mentioned. The other thing too, just briefly came to mind, recruiters love just a one-line overview of the company that you worked at. So many companies, people may not know what they do. Just provide a brief one-liner, industry, size, multinational, global, whatever it is. Just give a little bit of a summary with that. And also similar, you can introduce your role with like a very brief one to two liner as around why you were engaged in the role. So I think, look, they're the key sort of structure points. Clean font should be a no-brainer, but I do still see some fun ones. So your sans serif, like those sorts of things. Limiting graphics, tables, text boxes as much as possible, keeping everything in the actual body of the document. You should be generally okay. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. So, I mean, you've given me a few things to think about there. Maybe I'll update my resume after this. But before we move on to Q&A, and I'm going to invite anyone. I can't see how many people are streaming, so I got no idea who's watching. But anyone who's online, if you have any specific questions that you would like us to answer, please pop them in the chat or comment box. And it should come up here, and I should be able to see it. And then I can ask Bec, and we can go through those. But before, or to give you some time to ask those questions, I just wanted to give Bec, I wanted to give you the opportunity to just quickly, small plug for yourself, let people know how they can get in touch with you if they're interested in your services or if they need help with their resume.
Yep, definitely can do that. Did you want me to touch a little bit more on content?
I think we have, let's see. Yeah, we've got a few more minutes and still allow some time for Q&A.
Yeah.
So
well,
if some specifics on content you want to cover, and then you can do a plug.
Yeah, I guess just really super quick key things that I see commonly that could be done better because it's an opportunity to, like you said, market and pitch yourself. So I think a big one is the opening statement. So that value proposition at the top of your resume, the ones that I read and get through are generally really fluffy, vague objectives even. So objectives are tired. We don't really use them anymore. We have to very quickly and concisely sum up the industry experience, target specializations, core competencies, and the environments that this has been carved in. So just put yourself in the recruiter's shoes and how are you best going to pitch yourself based on their needs in that job description. So I want anyone listening to get rid of results-oriented professional seeking to apply skills to a new challenging environment. That tells me zip about how you're going to add value to my organization in the role that I'm advertising for. So get rid of those buzzwords. But overall, I would also say content-wise, the first third of your resume, before anyone scrolls down, that's your prime resume real estate. So just don't waste it on the mundane or irrelevant. Really get to the point, get to the heart of what it is that you have to offer. If you have experience buried deeper in, throughout your career that you think is really relevant, again, you need, create a career highlights section close to the top that brings that to the forefront. And you can still keep that reverse chronological through your experience, but it just gives you an opportunity to really give some points that like highlight time and showcase what is most relevant to them. So that was just, I think, very important.
Yeah, cool. Fantastic. So there have been a few questions coming in, which we will do in just a second. Cool. I do have a totally unplanned question, which I don't need a full answer for, but being a resume expert, how much does that tie in with cover letters? 30 seconds on your view of importance. And if it's really cool and people want to hear about it, maybe we can talk about that as another live at some point. But what's your experience around the cover letter factor for applications?
I would say if you're going to do it well, or don't do it at all. Generic doesn't work. It needs to be tailored. So you need to have a really, go through that job ad, be crystal clear on what it is that they're asking for, and just try and present your, very briefly, but your best examples of that in your cover letter, and a little bit more personality. It is your chance to say, this is why I'm super motivated for this position, and why I'm making a change potentially. And here's what I have to bring to the table. So rarely can it be done well, and that's why I'm in a job. People hate doing that. But if you're going to do it, you really have to put the time and effort in. Otherwise, don't bother. Yeah,
cool. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 questions now. Fantastic. We'll go quickly. So Ashley has asked, hey, Ashley, thanks for joining. Headshot or no headshot? What's your view?
No headshot.
No headshot.
Unless you're going for a promotional model.
What if you're really good looking? What if you're like, no. No headshot.
Like you said earlier, Dan, there's some poor recruitment practices out there, and we can have a laugh about some of those, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of discrimination. We just want to remove that from the get-go. Just don't give any sort of basis for that kind of decision-making. Take it off. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, that was a nice one. So Charlie's asked, would it be best to be starting with a template, or would you suggest creating something from scratch?
Depends where the template comes from. I really don't like the Word ones. That's something that I can definitely offer, is just something that very basic that I've created that I would know to work. That's, if people want a template, they can reach out to me for that afterwards. I'd be happy to give them one that I know is a lot better than your Word templates. Yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, I've used a Word template before, so, it obviously doesn't mean it was good, right? It was just usually it's last minute, throw something together. I need a tailored resume to get this job application because it's closing.
Of course, you got to do what you got to do. So,
okay, so Aniket is asking, is it good or is it recommended for having a career summary or 3 to 4 bullet points on career accomplishments?
Absolutely. So that would be near the top of your resume. You want to open strong with something like that. Career accomplishments that support, what their needs are, and what your target is. So 100%.
So the next question is from Rodo, and this is a really good question for especially the younger professionals. So he speaks as a software engineer with about a year of experience. How long do you think the resume should be? Now, with that amount of experience, not a huge amount of experience, is having things like personal projects or maybe university clubs and that sort of stuff still an important and relevant part to include?
Definitely. So I think that kind of is another myth. It's a great question where only paid experience counts, which is absolutely not the case. Anything there that supports where you've developed your skill set or your leadership, that should be included. It, again, as long as it, includes like a brief summary or a couple of bullet points that covers off on, if they've specified criteria in their job description. If there's a project or extracurricular activity that conveys that, yes, absolutely include it. So projects or volunteer work should be going in. And
Cool.
academics as well. If you are a high performer, that's another one too. I would just say that leave out marks that are potentially mediocre. I see that a lot as well. But yeah, paid experience is not the only experience. Put it cool. In if it's relevant. Yeah.
Okay, so Belinda is asking about do you list or mention certificates earned? And I think she's talking more about not necessarily formal degree qualifications, but you know how we all do a bunch of training and so ongoing training and so on. Where's their place in a resume?
Yeah, so you could put those in a section towards the end of your document saying additional professional development, additional training development, certifications, whatever you want, and put that list there. Again, it's just put yourself out of your shoes into theirs and say, does this add value? Is it even remotely relevant to what they need? If it's not, take it out. Excuse me. If you're not sure, just put it down towards the end. It can't hurt.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
All right. So Vithya is asking, as a researcher, he's looking to transition from academia into industry. So he's asking about whether he can tailor his resume to kind of suit that. He says, do I need to add the project title and a one-line explanation about it? I think the answer will probably be similar to what you said before. Talking about a company, the recruiter won't necessarily know the company. Give them some context, make sure they can understand the context and why it's relevant to the job you're applying for.
Exactly. How is this transferable to the goal moving forward? So just at the end of the day, anything, if you're questioning, is to come back and ask yourself, does this help the person at the other end connect the dots to how I'm suitable and logical? So yeah, doesn't need to be in depth, but give them some context. Yeah, definitely. And
fantastic.
Yeah, the trick there from academics.
Sorry, carry on. I've got one more good question.
Oh no, I was just going to say the trick there from academics to private industry is, yeah, you need to try and convey that commercial aspect there as best as you can, that you do have experience in industry if you can. Otherwise, that's just getting out there and talking to a lot of people who have made that transition as well. Yeah.
Cool. So Belinda has another question, and this one I really like as well. And Ashley has seconded that with a great question. Do you put referees on the resume, or do you put them on request or wait to be asked?
Best practice now, you'll find, is that there's no need to put them on at all. Even a one-liner saying referees available upon request is kind of redundant. Like, we know that. It's if you're trying to save space, it's something that especially you don't even need to make reference to. It's just paying attention to the job description requirements. So if they're saying, please list 2 referees, of course you are going to do that. If it doesn't, take them off. There's no need for it. And they should be checking in with you at the shortlisting stage about who those referees are that you'd like contacted.
Fantastic. All right. So we are bumping up against half an hour, and I did say that I would try to keep this to half an hour. So how can people get in touch with you if they would like to get in touch with you? A, for that very generous offer to give them a template for free. And otherwise, if they want to talk to you about, optimizing their resume for their job applications.
Yeah, so LinkedIn is the best way to get me. I'm on there regularly. So just my inbox on LinkedIn is the best. I don't know. I also have email. Dan, I don't know where you would put that if people want to reach me there. But
I'll throw it in a comment after we finish the live stream. I'll grab your email and pop it in the comment stream so people can see it if they want it.
Yeah, but perfect. I would just say LinkedIn is the best way. Like, just send me a connection request, a brief message that you are in this session, and we can go from there.
Fantastic. So there's a few thanks in the comments there. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Bec, so much for joining us. Very, very useful information for me as well, as for everyone else on this. Thanks, everyone who joined. We really appreciate it. Sorry again about it taking 3 times to get live going, but we figured it out and we are here. And for everyone that's on as well, I'm looking to bring some more guest speakers, I guess you might call them, on for this. So any topics that you're interested in, I will scour the internet. I will scour LinkedIn to find someone who is an expert in that field, and we will talk to them and answer your questions, as well as give you some great content up front. So on that note, thank you so much, Bec. I appreciate you coming on. And thank you everyone again for joining us. And that's it. We're done with the go live. Oh, this will go up on YouTube later if you want to watch it and record anyone. I try not to watch myself, but yeah, if anyone that's watching right now, if you've got someone who think could benefit from it, they can watch it live on LinkedIn. Sorry, they can watch the replay on LinkedIn, but I'll edit it down to get rid of the gaps and silence and stuff to be a nice, concise video to pop up on YouTube for people to use anytime. So thank you, Bec. Thank you, everyone. And thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, everyone.